Imagine loving someone so deeply that you're willing to tear your soul apart just to keep them breathing. This is the story of a vampire king who realized the truth too late. His queen wasn't cold, she was dying. And while he flaunted new lovers to spark her jealousy, she was quietly counting her last days. But what happens when a king is faced with losing the only woman he ever truly loved? He breaks the rules of life and death, and sacrifices half his immortality to save her. This is not just a love story. This is a warning. Sometimes the loudest cries for help are silent. Before we start, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? It means a lot seeing people connect through these stories. The Shadow Palace was always full of noise. Music from enchanted instruments, gossiping nobles, crackling torches, and the sound of power humming in the air. But none of that bothered King Kale. It was the quiet that terrified him. Quiet meant that nothing distracted him. Quiet meant he had to face his own thoughts. Quiet meant he had to notice the painful truth. Lyra, his human queen, no longer fought with him, or for him. There was a time when she argued with him about everything. Policies, decisions, even the arrangement of flowers in the palace courtyard. Her fire had made him feel alive, challenged, and strangely seen. Lyra had been the one person in the world who didn't fear him. She didn't bow, didn't tremble, didn't flatter. She met his power with her own stubborn courage. But the woman who once yelled at him for 3 hours about overtaxing farmers was now quiet. Gentle. Too gentle. Kale watched her from across the throne room one evening. Lyra sat at her desk, reading through reports in careful handwriting. Her shoulders were straight, her expression soft. Every few minutes she paused to rub her chest as if it ached, but she thought no one noticed. Kale noticed. He just didn't understand. Why isn't she fighting me anymore? Why doesn't she look angry when I talk to other women? Why doesn't she snap back when I tease her? To him, her silence felt like the slow, cold fading of love. He slammed his goblet down on the arm of the throne. A guard flinched. Lyra didn't look up. The lack of reaction cut him like a blade. He needed noise. He needed something loud enough to drown the insecurity growing inside him. So he did the one thing he knew would get a response from any lover, any wife. Something dramatic, sharp, and selfish. He tried to make her jealous. A beautiful noblewoman in a bright red gown stood near the musicians. Kale recognized her. Lady Selene, a woman known for her bold laugh and her desperate desire to climb the social ladder. Kale rose from his throne and walked toward her. "Your Majesty," Selene breathed, bowing low. Kale smiled, smooth and deliberate. "You look lonely. Allow me to fix that." She blushed. I am honored." Kale placed a hand on her lower back, guiding her to the center of the hall. Music swelled. People whispered. Kale's eyes, however, stayed fixed on Lyra. He waited. He expected a glare. A tightening of her jaw. Clenched fist. Anything. But Lyra simply lifted her head, scanned the room slowly, and offered him a small, gentle smile, like a polite greeting to a stranger. Then she returned her focus to her work. Kale's heart dropped. That smile felt like a funeral. Lady Selene giggled loudly. "Oh, my king, you are so charming. Everyone is staring at us." Kale didn't respond. His chest felt hollow tight. He turned again, desperate for Lyra to react. She did not. Instead, she placed a hand over her heart, rubbed it once as if calming an inner ache, and resumed writing. Kale felt rage, confusion, and fear mix inside him like poison. Why isn't she fighting for me? Has she stopped caring? Has she grown tired of me? For the first time in centuries, the immortal king felt powerless, because the one woman whose attention he craved had given him nothing. Absolutely nothing. The noise of the hall continued, but inside Kale's chest there was only silence. A silence that terrified him. Kale wasn't the type of king who handled insecurity well. Instead of talking to Lyra or asking her what was wrong, he spiraled deeper into his own pride. Every day became a stage. Every conversation became a performance. And every performance had one purpose: make Lyra react. He targeted different women with precision. Lady Rowan, a diplomat with long raven black hair. Lady Mira, the daughter of a wealthy merchant. Seren, a warrior woman newly appointed to the palace guard. All of them eager for the king's attention. All of them happy to flirt back. Cale used them like tools. One afternoon, he cornered Rowan by the garden fountain. "You look breathtaking today," he said loudly, enough for the nearby servants and Lyra to hear. Rowan giggled. "My king, you flatter me." Cale smiled, though something inside him ached. "Only when it is true." He waited. Lyra usually walked through the garden at this hour. Sure enough, her soft footsteps approached. Cale straightened, prepared for confrontation. But when Lyra appeared, she simply nodded politely to Rowan, then to Cale. "Good afternoon," she said with a gentle smile. Her voice was warm. "Kind. Too kind." Then she walked past them, moving slowly, her hand brushing the garden wall as if she needed support. Cale opened his mouth, but she didn't look back. Rowan touched his arm lightly. "She did not seem bothered, Your Majesty." Cale's jaw tightened. "No, she did not." Later that week, he escalated his performance. He invited several noblewomen to walk with him in the royal corridor, something that was usually reserved for the queen or his most trusted advisors. It was a loud group, full of laughter and flirtation. Cale made sure they passed Lyra. She was walking carefully, carrying a stack of scrolls, her breaths slow and controlled. "Lyra," Cale said smoothly, "you seem busy. Allow these lovely ladies and I to pass." Lyra paused. For a moment she swayed slightly, as if dizzy, but she quickly steadied herself. "I hope you enjoy your walk," she said. No anger, no hurt, just that same soft smile. Mira, one of the noblewomen, whispered loudly, "She doesn't even care." Another added, "Imagine being so calm while the king gives attention to others." Cale waited for Lyra to react to the insults. She didn't. Instead, she gave a slow, tired nod and continued walking, though her hand remained pressed against her ribs as if each breath hurt. Cale felt something break, not in triumph but in confusion. He entered the library later that night, hoping she might confront him. Instead, he found her asleep at her desk, her head lying on a half-finished report. A candle burned dangerously low beside her. Cale approached quietly. Her lips were slightly parted. Her face was pale. Her breaths were shallow. A stabbing fear shot through him. He reached to touch her shoulder but stopped himself. He didn't want to wake her. He didn't want to ruin the peaceful moment. He had not seen her truly sleep in weeks. But as he watched her, that soft smile returned to her face even in dreams. Smile that felt like goodbye. The first real crack in their silence. The next morning, Cale decided to push her harder, determined to break the wall of calm she had built. He invited Seren, the warrior woman, to spar with him in the training grounds. The courtyard was close enough to Lyra's window that she would hear everything. Cale fought fiercely, laughing loudly whenever Seren teased him. When he caught her arm in a dramatic flourish, Seren smirked. "Your Majesty, your queen may think we're getting too close," Cale said louder than necessary. "She does not seem to care what I do anymore." He knew he sounded bitter. He didn't care. He was trying to provoke Lyra. Soon enough, the window creaked open. Cale turned, triumphant. But instead of anger, Lyra leaned weakly against the window frame, her face pale. "Cale," she said softly, "please lower your voice. It's too loud this morning." Her voice held no jealousy, only exhaustion. Cale froze, sword still raised. "Are you unwell?" he asked sharply. Lyra blinked, as though surprised he noticed. "I'm just tired." "You never get tired," Cale insisted. She gave him a faint smile. "Everyone gets tired, Cale." Then she closed the window quietly. Cale lowered his sword. His heart thudded painfully. Seren whispered, "She looks ill." Cale snapped, "She is not ill." He didn't know whether he was trying to convince her or himself. The court starts talking. By the end of the week, the nobles were buzzing with rumors. Why is the queen so pale? She walked out of the council chamber like she was dizzy. Has the king grown bored of her? Is she letting him go? Kale overheard two servant girls whispering near the staircase. The queen smiled when the king danced with Lady Mira, one said quietly. I would have cried. The other responded. She is too tired to fight him. That sentence haunted Kale. Too tired to fight me. Why would she be tired? Tired of me. Of this marriage. Of everything. He needed answers, but his pride kept him silent. Instead he doubled down. The most cruel display yet. One evening in the grand dining hall, Kale sat beside Rowan instead of Lyra. He poured her wine, complimented her hair, and laughed at her jokes. People stared. Kale knew Lyra could hear every word from her seat. Rowan leaned closer, brushing Kale's arm. Your Majesty, you seem distracted. Kale's eyes flickered to Lyra, who sat several seats away, cutting her food slowly, each movement careful and delicate. She looked up when she felt his gaze. Their eyes met. Kale's heart stumbled. But instead of anger, accusation, or pain, Lyra offered him that same soft, heartbreaking smile. A tired smile. A letting-go smile. Kale looked away quickly, suddenly unable to breathe. Rowan whispered, Your queen did not react at all. Kale clenched his jaw. No, she didn't. He felt sick. For the first time since the performances began, victory tasted like ash. The moment that should have alarmed him. Later that night, Kale saw Lyra walking down the corridor alone. Her steps were small and slow. Her breath shallow. She paused halfway, pressing a hand to her chest and leaning against the wall. Kale watched from a distance. Lyra, he called. She straightened immediately, forcing a smile. Yes. Are you all right? I'm fine, she said quickly. I only walked too fast. She hadn't. She could barely stand. But she refused to worry him. For reasons he was too blind to understand. He took a step closer. Lyra, if something is wrong. She cut him off gently. Kale, not everything is about you. Then she walked past him. Low, weak, but smiling. Always smiling. Kale stood frozen in the empty corridor, feeling a chill settle into his bones. Something was wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. But he didn't know what. Not yet. And because of that ignorance, he would take the next step toward a disaster he had no idea was coming. Lyra had always been loved by the common people. She walked among them without guards, listened to their problems, and remembered their children's names. But recently, everyone noticed the same strange thing. The queen was fading. She walked slower. She tired easily. Her eyes looked dimmer every week. Some days, even her smile didn't reach her eyes. And yet, she kept smiling. She kept working. She kept supporting the king's decisions. She kept showing up, even when her body was failing in small, quiet ways. Meanwhile, Kale kept performing. Every day he brought another woman close to him, someone louder, brighter, more dramatic than Lyra's calm, gentle presence. He made sure the entire palace saw it. He made sure Lyra saw it. He believed she no longer cared. The court believed she had given up. But only Lyra knew the truth. She was dying, and she didn't want Kale to waste his remaining years drowning in grief after her death. She refused to break down. She refused to burden him. She refused to show weakness. Because she loved him too deeply to let him see her fading. The first sign the court noticed. One afternoon in the council chamber, Lyra stood to speak, but halfway through her sentence her voice trembled. She gripped the edge of the table tightly. Lord Terran whispered to another lord beside him. She looks ill. The other replied, Ill? Queen. Impossible. But even he didn't sound convinced. Kale entered the chamber, laughing loudly with Lady Mira, whose arm was looped through his. Mira tugged playfully at his sleeve. Your Majesty, the council stares at us. Kale smiled. Let them stare. His eyes briefly met Lyra's. She gave him a polite nod. Then she sat down slowly, her face going pale. She placed a hand over her heart, and her breathing tightened as if each inhale cost her something. Kale frowned. Not enough to be obvious, but enough for the healer standing behind the throne to notice. Still he said nothing. He couldn't understand the cold weight growing in his chest, and instead of confronting it, he pushed it away in the only way he knew, by making more noise. Everyone is talking. By the end of the week, gossip traveled through the palace like wildfire. Why does the queen sway when she stands? She held the banister as if she would fall. She looks thinner. She never eats at banquets. She looks like she's in pain. Kale heard the rumors. He hated them. But he hated even more that Lyra didn't come to him to talk. Why won't she yell at me? Slam a door. Cry. Anything. Instead she accepted everything quietly. And Kale's pride twisted that into something it wasn't. He thought her silence meant she didn't love him anymore. He didn't realize she was trying with all her remaining strength to avoid adding more weight to his shoulders. The night that should have broken him. Kale wandered the palace one late evening, restless. Music and laughter filled the grand hall as he passed, but he didn't enter. Instead, he saw a soft light coming from Lyra's office. He paused in the doorway. She sat slumped over a pile of reports, her hand trembling slightly as she wrote. Every few lines, she stopped to hold her breath through a stab of pain in her ribs. She didn't hear him. He listened. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, too fast. Lyra, he finally said softly. She jerked slightly, startled. Kale. You scared me. He stepped closer. You're working late. I am behind, she said softly, and the kingdom needs these decisions. You are the queen, he said. You can rest if you wish. She smiled sadly. I don't want to rest. I can't afford to rest, she thought but didn't say. Kale watched her for several long seconds. There was something weak and fragile in the way she held her pen. Something faint in her eyes. Lyra, he said slowly. Are you unwell? For the first time in weeks, her smile faltered. But only for a moment. Then she looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm fine, Kale. Truly. She wasn't. He felt it. He knew it. But his fear of being vulnerable, fear of loving deeply, fear of losing her, made him step back. Then good night, he said stiffly. Lyra lowered her eyes. Good night, Kale. He left. She waited until he was out of earshot, then covered her mouth to muffle a quiet cough, one that brought tears to her eyes from the pain in her chest. She had only days before the Starlight Gala, and she felt herself slipping. The Starlight Gala was the grandest event of the year. Nobles from every kingdom gathered under the enchanted ceiling that mirrored the night sky above. Candles floated in the air. Enchanted music echoed like celestial winds. Guests wore shimmering silks, diamonds, and polished armor. Kale stood at the center of the ballroom, wearing a black embroidered suit that made him look like a walking shadow. His eyes searched for Lyra. When he found her, his heart twisted painfully. She looked stunning and ghostly. Her midnight blue gown shimmered like starlight, but her skin was pale, too pale. Her movements slow. She struggled to hide the small tremors in her hands. But she was smiling warmly, greeting nobles graciously, hiding her exhaustion expertly. Kale's breath caught for a moment. Then his pride returned. If she still loves me, she'll react tonight. It has to. He turned away and signaled for Lady Celine, the radiant foreign ambassador with golden hair, to approach him. She walked gracefully, bowing elegantly. Your Majesty. Kale smiled. Will you share the first dance with me? Her eyes widened in delight. I would be honored. Gasps filled the room. It was scandalous for a king to dance with another woman before his queen. Exactly what Kale wanted. The dance that ruined everything. The music began, soft at first, then swelling into a romantic melody. Cale held Celine's waist gently, leading her in a smooth, controlled dance. Celine laughed at his jokes, leaning close, whispering flirtatious words. But Cale wasn't listening. His eyes stayed locked on Lyra. She stood across the room near the chancellor, speaking quietly. Her hands were folded neatly in front of her, though her fingers trembled slightly every few seconds. She didn't even look at him. He tightened his grip on Celine. "Look at me, Lyra. Get angry. Get jealous. Show me you still care." Celine giggled. "Your Majesty, you seem distracted." Cale forced a smile. "Just making sure the Queen sees how much fun we're having." Celine raised an eyebrow. "Should she be jealous?" "She should," he said. But Lyra didn't look once. The dance continued. Whispers spread like wildfire across the ballroom. "I can't believe this. The king doesn't even hide it. Poor Queen Lyra. She looks like she might faint." That last comment almost reached Cale's ears, but he ignored it. He was too focused on the non-existent reaction he wanted from Lyra. The toast that broke the queen. After the dance, Cale escorted Celine to the balcony, making sure everyone saw. 2 glasses of enchanted champagne floated toward them. Cale grabbed one and lifted it in a bold toast, directly toward Lyra across the ballroom. But she didn't look. Not until Celine lightly touched Cale's chest and whispered loudly, "Your queen seems unbothered. Perhaps she no longer cares." Something in Cale snapped. He raised his glass even higher and smiled arrogantly. At that moment, Lyra finally lifted her eyes. Their gazes met. Cale waited for anger. He waited for fire. He waited for that passionate woman he fell in love with. Instead, Lyra smiled softly. Slow, sad, devastating smile. A smile that said, "I release you. I won't fight anymore." Then she nodded gently, as if giving him permission, and turned away. Not in pain, not in anger, but in acceptance. Cale's hand trembled. The glass shook. Celine whispered, "Your Majesty." But Cale didn't hear her. For the first time, the noise around him felt deafening. His chest felt tight, his vision blurred. He suddenly hated everything, the music, the lights, the laughter. He pushed past Celine, his voice sharp. "Enough!" And he strode back into the ballroom. The moment everything fell apart, Lyra walked toward the exit, moving slowly through the crowd. Cale stormed after her. "Lyra!" he called. She didn't turn. Her shoulders sagged, as if carrying a heavy weight. He grabbed her arm lightly, pulling her to face him. "I saw that smile," he hissed. "What was that? What does it mean?" Her eyes lifted slowly to his. Clouded, tired, painfully calm. "Cale," she whispered, "not tonight. Please." "What does that mean?" he demanded. "You don't care anymore. You don't love me. Is that it? I spend all night." Her knees suddenly buckled. Her body went limp. The queen collapsed. Cale caught her before she hit the floor. "Lyra," he breathed, voice shaking. "Lyra." Her head fell against his chest. Her breaths were shallow, uneven. The music stopped. The entire ballroom fell silent. "Help!" Cale roared. "Healer! Guards!" His voice echoed like thunder. He lifted her into his arms, panic gripping him with icy claws. She felt too light, too fragile, too cold. "Lyra, open your eyes. Please," he begged. But she didn't. The room spun, his heartbeat pounded in his ears. She hadn't fainted from jealousy. She hadn't fainted from emotion. She fainted because she was dying. And Cale had been too blind to see it. The ballroom was frozen. The nobles stood in complete silence as Cale held Lyra in his arms. Her hair spilled over his sleeves like dark silk, her skin pale as moonlight, her lips dangerously colorless. "Move!" Cale roared. Guards scattered instantly. The music died. The candles flickered. Cale carried Lyra through the hall with desperate steps. his voice trembling for the first time in centuries. Lyra, stay with me, please. She did not respond. Her head hung loosely against his chest, her breathing shallow and rattling. He stormed through the palace corridors, the queen's gown trailing like spilled midnight behind him. He burst into their chamber, placed her gently on the bed, and shouted, "Get the healer!" Moments later, healer Yara, an older woman with sharp eyes and braided silver hair, rushed into the room. 2 assistants followed, carrying bags of herbs, potions, and glowing stones. "Step back, Your Majesty," Yara commanded. "No," Kale growled. "I'm not leaving her." Yara clenched her jaw. "Then stand still and do not get in my way." She knelt beside Lyra, touching her neck to search for a pulse. Her face fell. "How bad?" Kale demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Yara didn't answer immediately. She began checking Lyra's breathing, her pupils, the tremor in her fingers. Kale grabbed her wrist. "How bad?" Yara looked him directly in the eyes. "Very bad." Kale's breath stopped. He sank into the chair beside the bed, his hands shaking uncontrollably. The healer's work. Yara's assistants prepared poultices and herbs, lighting enchanted candles that filled the room with a soft golden glow. Yara pressed a bitter-smelling vial to Lyra's lips. "Come on, child, swallow. Yes, good girl," Yara whispered, coaxing gently. Lyra's throat moved weakly. Her eyelids fluttered, but she did not wake. Kale leaned forward, his voice breaking. "Lyra, open your eyes. Please." No response. Yara's expression tightened. She placed her hand on Lyra's chest, then looked up slowly. "Your Majesty, her heartbeat is unsteady." Kale stiffened. "Fix it." "I'm trying." "Then try harder." The air crackled around Kale, shadows trembling with his rage and fear. Yara didn't flinch. "I cannot cure what I cannot diagnose," she said firmly. "I need time." Kale looked at Lyra, really looked. The tremor in her hands. A shallow breath. The faint bluish tint at the edges of her lips. The signs had been there for weeks. He had ignored them. He had been too busy performing for a reaction that was never going to come, because she had no strength to give one. His heart twisted violently. What have I done? The court outside the door. Outside the chamber, nobles whispered nervously. Is the queen dying? Did she collapse because of the king? He danced with another woman all night. They say she finally broke. No, did you see her? She looked sick for months. That's worse. The king didn't notice at all. Every word was a blade to Kale's chest. He slammed the chamber door shut with a burst of power, cutting off the whispers. Inside the room, only Lyra's faint, painful breathing broke the silence. Hours passed. Kale refused to leave her side. He held her hand tightly, praying for any sign of life. At dawn, Yara finally stood and wiped her hands. Your Majesty, she said quietly, we need to talk. Kale rose slowly, like a man walking toward his own execution. What is wrong with her? He asked, his voice hoarse. Yara hesitated. Kale's eyes flashed dangerously. Tell me. Now. Yara took a deep breath. The queen is suffering from a condition called fading soul burn. Kale froze. That condition no longer exists, he said sharply. It was wiped out centuries ago. No, Yara said softly. It simply became rare. Kale's chest tightened. Then what does it mean? Yara's voice dropped, heavy and sorrowful. It means the queen's life force is slowly burning away, from the inside. Kale staggered backward, gripping the edge of the table. How? He whispered. Why her? Yara looked down, her hands trembling. Your Majesty, you should know better than anyone. Kale stared at her. What are you implying? Yara swallowed hard. This condition only happens when a mortal absorbs too much raw magical energy. Usually in an act of protection. Kale's pulse stopped. Slowly, too slowly, his memories returned. Years ago, A battlefield. A reckless spell aimed at him. Lyra, young, mortal, fearless, throwing herself before him, her body glowing with stolen light as she shielded him. He had forgotten the aftermath. He had forgotten her collapse. He had forgotten everything except her smile once she woke again. A little tired, she had said. He never questioned it. Never. Cale felt his knees weaken. He grabbed his hair with trembling hands. "She saved me," he whispered. "And she's been paying for it ever since." Yara nodded slowly. Her body never recovered. The burn spread slowly, invisibly. The symptoms only appear at the end. Cale's voice shattered. "How long?" Yara hesitated again. "How long does she have?" Cale demanded, voice cracking. Yara closed her eyes. "Days. Perhaps a week." The world stopped. Cale's heart ripped open inside his chest. He had days left with her. Days. And he had wasted months pushing her away. His legs gave out, and he collapsed beside the bed, burying his face against Lyra's limp hand. "Lyra. Lyra, I'm so sorry." He shook violently, tears blurring his vision. He, the immortal king who feared nothing, was now terrified of a future without the woman lying unconscious before him. The truth Lyra hid. Yara placed a gentle hand on Cale's shoulder. "It's worse than you think," she said softly. Cale lifted his head slowly. "How could it be worse?" "She hid it." Cale blinked. "What?" "For months," Yara continued. "She knew something was wrong. She came to me in secret many times." Cale's breath caught. "She knew." "She begged me not to tell you. She didn't want to distract you. She didn't want to cause you pain." Cale's voice cracked. "She went through this alone." "Yes, because she loves you." Cale slammed his fist against the floor. "I am her husband. She should have come to me." Yara's gaze was sharp and cutting. "She didn't want you to carry grief while ruling the kingdom." Cale shook his head violently. "I could have saved her. I could have done something." Yara spoke even more quietly. "There's more." Cale looked up sharply. "Say it." Yara hesitated only a second longer. "She believed you were searching for someone else." Cale's heartbeat stopped. "What?" "Your behavior with other women," Yara whispered. "Lyra thought you were trying to choose a new queen." Cale felt like he'd been stabbed. "No," he whispered, horrified. "No, no, no. She watched you closely, not with jealousy, but with acceptance. She hoped, she prayed, you would find someone kind. Someone strong enough to take her place when she was gone." Cale's breath vanished. Everything inside him tore open. "She was choosing a replacement," Yara said quietly. "She didn't react because she thought you needed someone after her death." Cale covered his face with both hands. A broken sound escaped him, half cry, half scream. He shook uncontrollably, his entire body trembling with grief, guilt, and horror. "She gave up her fire," Yara whispered. "She gave up her voice. She gave up everything to make your eventual grief easier." Cale wanted to tear the world apart. His voice was rough and ragged. "What do I do?" he asked. "Tell me how to save her." Yara hesitated again. You can't." Cale's entire body went cold. "There is no cure, Your Majesty. Not for mortals." Cale rose slowly, too calmly. "Then I will make one." Yara shook her head desperately. "You can't change the laws of life and death." But Cale's voice had changed, low, ancient, furious. "I am the law." He reached down, brushed a trembling hand across Lyra's cheek, and whispered, "You saved my life once. Now it is my turn." His eyes darkened with determination. "I will not let you die." The chamber was silent after the healer left. Too silent. Cale stood beside Lyra's bed, staring down at her pale face. She looked peaceful, but unbearably fragile, as if even the act of breathing cost her strength she no longer had. He brushed his fingers gently over her cheek. Her skin was cold. "Lyra," he whispered. His voice cracked. His chest twisted. He felt something he had almost forgotten how to feel. Fear. She had saved his life once, without hesitation, without fear, without considering the cost. And Cale, blind and arrogant, had spent the last months hurting her, thinking she no longer cared. But she did. She had always cared. She had been preparing him to survive without her. His throat tightened painfully. "I won't let you go," he murmured. "Not like this. Not after everything I've done wrong." He sat down on the edge of the bed, lifting her limp hand into his own. Her fingers were cool and far too light. He bowed his head. "If the world says you have days left," he whispered, "I will give you days without end." He took a deep breath, letting his ancient magic stir inside him. It felt like a storm awakening, wild, violent, hungry. He stood, and the shadows in the room responded. The old magic. Cale walked to the center of the chamber and spread his hands. The temperature dropped instantly. Candles flickered, shrinking into thin flames. Frost crept along the windows. This was no ordinary magic. This was ancient magic. Forbidden, dangerous, powerful enough to break the balance between life and death. The spell had a name whispered only in old myths. Soul-binding. Mortals were never meant to bear its weight. Immortals were told never to attempt it. Cale didn't care. He would pay any price, even if that price was his own soul. The preparation. He stripped off his gloves and rolled up his sleeves. The dark veins of immortal energy pulsed beneath his skin like black fire. He moved to the bed and placed one hand over Lyra's heart, the other over his own. Instantly, his body shuddered. A burning shock ripped through him, forcing him to clench his teeth as the magic began to awaken fully. "Lyra," he whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her chest rose slowly beneath his hand, too slowly. Cale's eyes darkened. "It's my turn to fight," he said. He raised his head and began to speak the incantation, words from a language before languages existed. The sound wasn't merely heard. It vibrated through the walls, the floor, even the air. Shadows twisted violently, swirling around him in spirals. The entire room darkened until the only light was the faint glow pulsing from Cale's eyes. The ritual begins. Golden threads of Lyra's fading life force shimmered weakly beneath Cale's palm. But Cale's life force, ancient, immense, eternal, burned bright and violent, like molten metal beneath his skin. He forced his energy toward her. "Take it," he whispered hoarsely. "Take everything." Pain exploded in his chest as the first piece of his immortal soul tore free. He gasped, staggering forward but refusing to stop. The room spun. Sweat dripped down his face. His vision blurred. But his hands did not move from their place. He forced more of his soul into the ritual, ignoring the agony ripping through him. The golden thread in Lyra's body flickered, then brightened slightly, feeding on Cale's immortal essence. Her breathing deepened. Her heartbeat steadied. Cale sobbed in relief even as his body trembled violently from the pain. Cost. The ritual grew more violent as it continued. Cale's knees buckled and he fell forward, his forehead pressing against the mattress beside Lyra. He choked out another word of the incantation, this one tearing through him like a blade. A scream escaped him, but not from his throat. The sound came from deep inside, the cry of a soul being ripped apart piece by piece. The bed shook. The walls groaned. Frost crawled across the floor. The windows cracked. Cale's eyes began to dim. His immortal aura flickered like a dying flame. He felt it clearly. His life, his eternity, draining away into her. He pressed his palm harder over Lyra's heart. "Live," he whispered, voice shaking with desperation. "Live, Lyra. Even if it destroys me." Another piece of his soul tore free and merged with hers. The agony was indescribable, but Cale endured it, For her. The binding completes. The room fell silent suddenly, as if holding its breath. The golden thread of Lyra's life force pulsed once, twice, then surged with strength. A radiant glow spread through her body, warming her cold skin. Cale let out a broken sob as he felt her life returning fully. Her heartbeat strong, her breath steady, her pulse warm. He had done it. He had brought her back. He collapsed forward, his body drained and trembling. His forehead pressed against her chest, where her newly strengthened life force hummed beneath his skin. He whispered one final word, "Mine," and then darkness overtook him. Cale woke hours later on the floor beside the bed, cold and shaking uncontrollably. His vision was blurry, and every bone in his body ached. But the first thing he did was lift himself onto his elbows and look at Lyra. She was still there, still breathing, still alive. Her cheeks had color again, faint but real. Her lips were no longer blue. Her hair spread across the pillow like a halo. Cale pressed a shaking hand over her heart. It beat strong beneath his palm. He let out a long, shaking breath. "She's alive," he whispered. "She's alive." For the first time in days, he felt a fragile peace inside him. But that peace did nothing to soothe his pain. Every movement felt like knives tearing through him. Every breath dragged like sand. His skin felt too heavy. His heart felt exhausted. He was no longer fully immortal. He could feel the difference. He was weaker, more mortal than immortal, interrupted, broken, and he didn't care. He sat beside Lyra's bed, exhaustion weighing his limbs, and rested his forehead against the back of her hand. "I will watch you," he murmured, "every second, until you wake." And he did. The palace changes. Days passed. The palace grew silent. Not a silence Cale feared, but a silence he chose. There were no balls, no feast, no visitors. Even whispers faded. Everyone knew the king would tolerate no distractions, not while his queen lay recovering. Cale's world shrank to one room. He dragged a chair to the side of the bed and never left it. He slept curled beside her hand, waking at every small sound. The servants brought food. He barely touched it. What he did instead was care for her. He wiped her forehead when sweat beaded there. He changed the warm cloths when fever rose and fell. He brushed her hair so it wouldn't tangle. He held her hand for hours, sometimes all night. And he talked, softly, constantly, about anything and everything. He told her about the first time he saw her. About all the times she had surprised him. About all the moments he should have listened to her but didn't. About how blind he had been. How foolish. How horrible. Sometimes he apologized until his voice cracked. Sometimes he simply whispered her name. "Lyra. Lyra. Come back to me." The severed immortality. The healers came to check on him as well, but Cale pushed them away. They whispered among themselves. "The king has lost power. He looks weaker. He sacrificed something. He is no longer fully immortal." All of it was true. Cale could feel the change deep inside. His soul, once whole and endless, now felt cracked. He tired easily. His vision blurred if he overused magic. The world felt heavier than before. He didn't regret it, not even for a moment. But his diminished state brought a new feeling to him. Mortality. And with mortality came fear. Fear that if Lyra did not wake soon, she would slip away anyway. Fear that the ritual had bought only a little time. Fear that the bond wasn't strong enough. He held her hand tighter. "Fight," he whispered. "Please fight." The first sign of hope. On the 12th night, when Cale's exhaustion pushed him to the edge of collapse, he felt something. Small pressure. Soft squeeze. He froze. Then slowly lifted his head. Lyra's fingers were curled around his. "Lyra," his voice broke. Her eyelids trembled faintly. A tear rolled down Kale's cheek. Lyra, please, open your eyes. Her eyelashes fluttered. And then, slowly, her eyes opened, dull at first, confused, uncertain, but alive. Kale made a sound, somewhere between a sob and a laugh, as he leaned forward and pressed her hand to his forehead. Thank the stars, he whispered. Thank every ancient god. You're back. Lyra blinked slowly, her gaze focusing. Her voice was weak. Kale. He looked at her, and she saw him clearly for the first time in months. Ill. Eyes dark with exhaustion. Shoulders trembling from relief. She reached up with trembling fingers and touched his cheek. You look tired, she whispered. Kale let out a broken laugh. You terrified me. She swallowed weakly. What happened? You came back to me, Kale whispered. His voice shook. He pressed his forehead to her hand again, letting out a breath he'd been holding for days. I will never leave you again, he whispered. Not for a moment. And Lyra, though weak, though confused, smiled softly. 'Cause she felt it. She felt his soul tied to hers. She felt his love, raw, real, and finally unmasked. She felt everything. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. Lyra's awakening spread through the palace like a wave of soft light after a long storm. Servants whispered joyfully. Guards relaxed for the first time in weeks. Even the nobles who secretly feared the king's wrath breathed a quiet sigh of relief. But no one felt the shift more deeply than Kale. For the first few hours after she woke, Kale stayed kneeling beside her bed, his forehead resting on her palm as though afraid she might slip back into darkness if he let go. Lyra lay still, observing him with slow blinks and faint breaths, her mind hazy but aware. Kale, she murmured gently. He immediately lifted his head, eyes glassy with exhaustion. I'm here. You look terrible, she whispered with a small, weak smile. Kale let out a sound that was half a laugh, half a broken sob. You scared me. Lyra blinked slowly. What happened? Kale hesitated. He didn't know how to explain the weight of what he'd done. He didn't know how to tell her he had given up half his immortality, half his soul, to save her life. He didn't know how to confess that he had nearly killed himself out of pure desperation. So he simply said, You were dying. I couldn't let that happen. Lyra frowned faintly. But, Kale, you look. I'm fine, he said quickly. He wasn't fine. He was exhausted, drained, weak in a way he had never felt before. But her life mattered more. She studied him quietly, noticing the shadows under his eyes, the tremble in his fingers, the soft rasp in his breaths. Something had changed in him. He felt mortal. And she understood. Her eyes widened slightly. You did something. Kale swallowed. I saved you. At what cost? She whispered. None that matters. Her eyes softened with heartbreak. Oh, Kale, she whispered. You foolish man. Kale leaned forward, resting his forehead gently against hers. Tell me you forgive me. For what? She asked softly. For not seeing. For not listening. For hurting you. For failing you. For everything. Lyra lifted her trembling hand and cupped his cheek. Kale, you didn't fail me. He froze, his breath catching. You didn't know, she said gently. I hid everything from you. I didn't want your heart to break while ruling the kingdom. That doesn't excuse me, Kale said, voice cracking. I should have seen you. I should have known. Lyra stroked his cheek weakly. And I should have trusted you with my pain. He closed his eyes as tears escaped him. They stayed like that, foreheads touching, breaths mingling, for a long moment. A fragile peace settled between them, the peace of two hearts finally speaking honestly after months of silence. Her slow recovery. The days that followed were quiet, gentle, healing days. Kale helped Lyra sit up, supporting her back with pillows. He fed her small spoonfuls of broth, refusing to let servants do it. Each tiny improvement felt like a victory. The first time she stood, leaning heavily on him, Kale almost cried. "Easy," he murmured, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Lean on me." She did. Not just physically but emotionally. The chasm between them, created by pride, fear, misreading, silence, began to shrink. Each day, Kale woke early to watch her breathe. Each night, he sat by her bedside reading stories until she fell asleep. And each moment, he regretted everything he had done to push her away. One evening, as he helped her walk down the corridor, Lyra spoke quietly. "You were trying to make me jealous." Kale nearly stumbled. "Lyra, you tried so hard," she said softly. "But I didn't react. So you pushed harder." Kale swallowed painfully. "Yes." "Why?" she whispered. Kale stopped walking. He turned to her, his eyes burning with remorse. "Because I was terrified," he said. "Your silence felt like you were slipping away from me. I thought you no longer loved me." Lyra blinked in surprise. "Kale, I never stopped." "But you stopped fighting," he murmured. "And I needed the noise, the fire, the chaos. I thought your calm meant you were bored of me." Her grip on his cloak tightened weakly. "My calm was exhaustion, not lack of love." His heart clenched painfully. "I know that now," he said softly. "And I will spend the rest of my life making up for my blindness." Lyra leaned her forehead against his chest. Her voice trembled. "I thought you were searching for someone to replace me." Kale's entire body froze. "Never," he breathed. "Never. I only wanted you. I just didn't know how to reach you anymore." Lyra nodded slowly. "We both misread each other," she whispered. Kale wrapped his arms around her carefully, holding her as though she might break. "And we both paid for it," he murmured. A quiet evening of truth. Later, as they sat by the fireplace in her room, sharing a blanket, Lyra finally asked, "What did you do to save me, Kale?" Kale stared into the flames, the glow reflected in his tired eyes. "I tore my soul apart," he said softly. "I bound your life to mine." Lyra's breath caught. "You what?" He turned to her slowly. "You will live as long as I live," he said gently. "Your life is tied to mine now." Lyra touched his face, horror and love mixing in her gaze. "Oh, Kale, that is too great a price." "No price is too great for you," he interrupted quietly. Her eyes filled with tears. "You shouldn't have to die sooner because of me." Kale smiled softly, a smile full of love and pain. "I didn't shorten my life," he whispered. "I simply chose a version of it that includes you." Her tears fell. Kale pulled her into a slow, fragile embrace, resting his head against her chest, listening to the heartbeat he had fought like hell to save. For the first time in months, Lyra wrapped her arms around him with strength. "Thank you," she whispered, "for loving me enough to save me." Kale's eyes burned as he whispered back, "No, thank you, for loving me despite everything." As weeks passed, Lyra grew stronger. She could walk without help. She could eat full meals. She could laugh again, soft and warm. But the biggest change wasn't in her body. It was in Kale. The palace staff noticed it first. The once fearsome, impulsive, loud king became something else entirely. Gentler, quieter, thoughtful. The king who needed noise had become the king who loved silence, because silence meant Lyra was breathing beside him. He no longer attended feasts or entertained noblewomen. He no longer filled halls with dramatic performances. He no longer chased reactions from the woman he loved. Instead, he read with her, walked with her, sat with her in peaceful quiet. And he smiled more. Not the arrogant smiles from before. Softer ones, real ones. The kingdom whispered. The queen saved him. The king is different now. They found their way back to each other. And he gave up something great for her. No one knew the full truth. Only Kale and Lyra felt the bond of life pulsing between them. Complete, unbreakable, sacred. One warm afternoon, Kale took Lyra to the royal gardens for the first time since her collapse. Flowers swayed gently in the breeze, and sunlight warmed the air. Lyra rested her head on Kale's shoulder. It feels like a dream to walk again. Kale kissed her forehead. It feels like a miracle. She smiled. Do you regret it? Kale frowned. Regret what? Giving up your immortality. Kale turned to face her fully. Listen to me, he said softly, cupping her cheeks with both hands. I would give it up 100 times if it meant keeping you. Her eyes glistened. But you were eternal. He shook his head gently. An eternity without you would have been nothing but a prison. She exhaled shakily as he continued. I do not fear dying someday, he said. What I feared was living forever without you. A tear slipped down her cheek. Kale wiped it away with his thumb. The truth is, he whispered, choosing you was the first moment in my life that felt truly free. Lyra leaned into his palm. And choosing you, she whispered back, was the first moment I felt truly alive. They stood there together as the sun set, two souls bound by sacrifice, love, pain, forgiveness, and the rediscovery of what truly mattered. The promise. That night, Kale carried Lyra to their balcony. The kingdom lay beneath them, glowing under the soft shine of lanterns and moonlight. Kale wrapped a cloak around her shoulders. Are you cold? Not today, she said with a smile. He took her hand. Lyra, he said quietly, I need you to hear this. She turned to him. He looked at her with more emotion than he had ever shown before. I choose you, he said. Not because I must, not because we are bound, but because you are the only person who has ever seen me. Not the king, not the immortal, not the monster, but the man. Lyra's lips parted. Kale continued, voice trembling. I will spend every day earning your forgiveness, and every moment reminding you that you matter more to me than any eternity. Lyra stepped closer, resting her forehead against his chest. She whispered so softly he almost didn't hear. I never stopped loving you. Not even when I was fading. Kale closed his eyes, arms wrapping around her. For the rest of our days, he murmured. However many there are, we walk together. Lyra smiled against his chest. Together, she repeated. A final scene. Later that night, they lay in bed. Lyra curled against Kale's chest, their hands intertwined. She lifted her head slightly and whispered, You gave up half your immortality for me. Kale kissed her forehead. No, he said softly. I didn't lose anything. She blinked up at him. He smiled, a soft, warm, human smile. I gained a lifetime with you. Lyra closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. And for the first time in a long, painful, beautiful journey, the king and his queen slept peacefully in each other's arms. Together. Live. Whole. If this story pulled you in, don't just disappear into the shadows. Hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next story, it's darker, deeper, and even more addictive. Trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next.